Hello friends, welcome. Friends, there was a report which I saw, which was done by Bain and Company, which is giving the projection of India's GDP by 2047. So the report, the subtitle of the report says that the outline it outlines a technology roadmap to position India as high income developed economy by 2047 with a projected GDP of about 23 to 35 trillion dollars. So this report has been done with collaboration with NASSCOM, and maybe I have not gone through the report in detail. So what they're doing is they are basically laying out a framework as to how India can achieve this target. That's all they are saying. And then there are some other articles which talks about India is set to to kind of show a growth of around $30 trillion of GDP by 2047. So the various estimates are there, and which are all good, because you need to have a vision. Unless you have a vision, you cannot really lay out the path. The path has to be laid out with the projected vision that has been clearly spelled out. So all these are good, but a vision without past performance, without correlating with what we have achieved in past, may not be a realistic vision, right? You cannot just throw any numbers on the table, because that will become an unachievable vision unless we see what we have done in past and what kind of correction that is required in order to achieve that target. So that's why we have to look back in history first, look at the numbers, what we have achieved, and then on the basis of that we make the projection. This is point number one. The second point is that the growth cannot be always at the same rate, because as your economy matures, the different growth rates are going to take over. It is very high when the base is low, and as the base grows, the growth rate is also will plateau. So we have to take that into account. You can't just project a uniform growth rate throughout this window period till 2047. As we have already seen in other economies which have become developed economy, their growth has shrinked compared to what that was in past. For example, US is growing at 3%, China has grown, which we grew at 10%, has now shrunk to 4 to 5%, and India is showing a growth rate currently at around 6.4%. It grew faster, now it has slowed down. So friends, what I am going to do is I am going to give you numbers right on the table for you to make a judgment that this vision of 23 to 35 trillion dollars of economy will require us to grow at what rate, and whether it is a realistic target given what we have achieved in past. That's all we are going to do in this video, because without looking at the past, making projection about the future may not be an accurate prediction, right? So let's look at what the past is. Now for the past, in order to look at the past, what I have done is, in my website, I have a chart, which is a live chart, which captures all the past performance of the government for the series of the GDP. This GDP time series has been captured in this chart, and we have all the verticals, which is the GDP as well as GVA, constant, current. Both the versions have been captured, and you can look at the value in rupees lakh crores, value in USD, and both growth in rupees as well as in USD. All the things can be looked at for the various dimensions here. So I'm going to show you what the current situation is. So let's do one by one. For GDP constant, you can very clearly see that we have kind of was growing. We had 87.4 lakh crores in FY12, and it actually kept on growing, almost linear growth, and we reached 145.2 lakh crores of rupees by FY20. And then later in FY21, it suddenly dropped because of COVID, and then we started growing. But the trajectory of growth that we are seeing here is not substantially different from what we saw in past. Like you see that the curve, the line, the gradient of this line is almost similar in nature, right? Maybe a little bit higher here, but it is almost similar in nature. So it basically tells you that if the COVID did not hit us, we could have grown in this path Now we had just gone a little bit of phase lag, and we are now starting to grow. We have lost 1.5 years. That's all. Now, in this, you can see that the various contributions have been made by private sector final consumption expenditure, which also is showing a similar growth trajectory. So it's going like this, and then it kind of going like this. The gross gross fixed capital formation is showing a larger trajectory, or the gradient is higher compared to what it was past. Maybe with a little bit, because the focus of the government has been on creating spending a lot of money on capex. Therefore, this is a little bit of gradient going in the higher direction. Government final consumption expenditure, it kind of went up and then it kind of went down, and it is not that encouraging. Then we have exports. Exports are showing a very, very large growth trajectory, but whatever gains that we are making through exports have been getting nullified because of the imports are kind of cannibalizing or diluting all the gains that we have in export, because imports will get netted out from the overall aggregation, and that's would finally lead to this number. So this is regarding GDP constant. GDP current, which is on an actual prices, also kind of shows a similar growth trajectory. There is nothing much different here, right? So if you see here that it all kind of follows the same growth trajectory, there is nothing different. And also here, see, the exports have grown significantly, and so are the imports, and therefore it's getting nullified. Now, friends, what we are going to do is we are going to look at the dollar numbers, because the dollar numbers are extremely important. From a dollar point of view, what we are seeing that our GDP was, and for the dollar we have to take GDP current. We can't take GDP constant, because the current is what. So how GDP in dollars are calculated? Take the nominal GDP and divide it by the average rupee rate for that particular quarter. That's all I have done, right? So you see it was $1.7 trillion, and then it kind of slowly started increasing, and then the growth in dollar terms have suddenly jumped up, and it has increased significantly, and now we are at $3.8 trillion economy, where the consumption for private sector consumption actually is a very, very significant contributor, followed by capital formation, which is around $1.1 trillion. And we are seeing a similar trend that exports have grown, but imports have nullified all the growth as far as exports are concerned. Now let's look at the growth USD, because then only we will be able to ascertain that what rate of growth we will be taking into account for making the future prediction. Now this is current, and we are taking the growth in dollars. So this is the line item for GDP. You can see that the GDP growth in India in dollar terms was 3.3%, 1.2%, 9%, 4.3%, 9.9%. So there was a lot volatility, and then it kind of went down to minus 16.1%, then it went up to 13.2%, and then after that 4.3%, then minus 4.3%, and this is because of rupee to dollar variations, etc. There are significant changes which took place, and then because of the low base of the COVID, it went to 17.6%, and now it has stabilized to 4.8%, 7.6%, 7.2%. So we can safely make a prediction that in dollar terms, we may be growing at the rate of 7%. And then there are different rate of growth for different verticals, right? You can see that it is 9.58% here as far as final consumption expenditure is concerned. Gross physical capital expenditure 4.7%, government final expenditure 6%, and then the exports have grown by 5.4%, and imports have increased, grown by a much larger percentage. So now, having seen this number of 7.2%, let's go to the Excel sheet and let's do the calculation. So what I have done, friends, is I have plugged the 7.2 percentage number here for a period of 5 years from FY25 to 30. So you can clearly see from here that this is the number that we see here, this $3.8 trillion, which is for FY25, right? Now, as you apply this 7.2% growth rate, you will find that the numbers are increasing, and we are hitting a $5 trillion economy by FY29. Not FY27, not FY26, not FY28, but FY29. And then as we grow, I have taken a lower growth base of 6% in dollar terms. Then by FY35, we reach a $7 trillion economy. And then I've taken another 5%, 1% dip, percentage growth of 5%, starting from FY36 to FY40. So from $7 trillion, we will go to $7.5 trillion to $9.2 trillion. And then I've taken a growth percentage of 4% when we achieve this $9 trillion. And we will finally reach by 2047 to $12 trillion, which is considerably less than what the report predicts here. You see, the report is saying 23 to $35 trillion, right? Now let's look at the growth numbers in order to reach 23 to $35 trillion. How we should be changing our growth numbers, and it's very simple. We should be plugging the numbers here. So instead of 6%, let me take 7% here, and then make it 6%, because definitely, you can't really grow at 7%, and make it 5% here. So here we reach how much? Here we reach $14 trillion. Nowhere close to $23 trillion, because if we take 7%. So we have to grow at least in 7% till 7.2% growth for 2000 FY30, and then from FY31 to 35, 7%, which means that by FY35 we will reach $7.5 trillion. So $7.5 trillion is 10 years from now, right? So $5 trillion maybe we will be able to achieve by FY29, but $7 trillion is going to be 10 years from now, right? And then we will be reaching $10 trillion in FY40, and then $14 trillion in FY47, which is nowhere close to $23 trillion. So in order for us to grow to $23 trillion, let's plug this number to 777%. Still we have reached $17 trillion, nowhere close to $23 trillion or $30 trillion. So for us to reach $23 trillion, what do we need to do? We need to start growing for this whole bracket of FY25 to 30 at 8%, and then make a realistic assumption of 7%, and then make it 6%, and then make it 5%, right? Still we are at $14 trillion. Can you see that? Even if you grow at 8%, which is extremely hard to do, right? So let's make a slight tweak. Let's make it 7.5%, let's make it 6.5%, and let's make it 5.5%. Still we are at $16 trillion, right? Can you see this? So for you to make projection, we have to grow maybe at 8%, right? Still we are not at $23 trillion, right? So we are nowhere close. So this is an unrealistic number which you see here, which I showed you here, this number, because you can't be growing at 8% for all the years, given what the rupee to dollar ratios are keeping on changing. Because as the dollar become more stronger, our GDP, because you have to divide by the dollar rate. So even in nominal term your GDP grows, you are going to basically shrink in dollar term, which is clearly seen here, right? So for you to reach $23 trillion, we have to grow at 9%, and let me make it realistic 8%, and then make it 7%, then make it 6%, and still we are $18 trillion, nowhere close to that. So let me reduce by 0.5%. So let us make it 8.5%, then 7.5%, then 6.5%, and we are now at $19 trillion, right? So if we grow at 9%, let's see, for all the periods, we are at $25 trillion, which is a highly unrealistic target. It is not possible. History is a testimony. You look at any other country, nobody is growing at that rate. So all the numbers that you see here, now you understand all these numbers which are being thrown at you. India is going to achieve $30 trillion. India is going to achieve between $23 to $35 trillion. These are highly unrealistic targets given what we have accomplished and where we are standing right now. You got it? So that's what I wanted to show to you, friends, that these predictions, whatever been predicted by these reports and these lofty targets, are not achievable. We need to look at the numbers, with reality and modify our strategies to conserve on imports. Like if you look at this, what I was telling you, if you look at this, imports are also growing significantly. So let me just show you the GDP at current, and I'm going to show you the value in USD. So you'll see that if we are not able to contain imports, whatever gains that we are achieving through our increased exports are not contributing to this top line. So that does not. So whenever people telling you that we have done great on export, that is all fine. But we have to ask the question, what we are doing on imports. If our imports are increasing, proportionately or more than our exports, then our GDP is getting hit because imports will get netted out from the total aggregation of all these line items. So friend, I think you probably understood how crucial it is to understand what it is in past, how we can tweak these items to bias this further in the growth trajectory, make it much more, sharper and the gradient, towards higher growth. We have to look into these aspects, and then we can look at the contribution by various sector, where we are, right, as regards contribution by various sectors. So let me just take you to GDP current and in value in USD. So you will see that our economy is still a very, very agriculture centric economy with $611 billion of contribution to the $3.4 trillion as far as GVA current is concerned. Then we have mining, very, very low. Manufacturing is still roughly around $479 billion. And then construction is $304 billion. Electricity utilities $80 billion. And then trade and hotels are around $595 billion. Financial services, we are doing pretty good, $789 billion. Defense is $523 billion, and taxes is $370 billion. So friends, that's all in this video. I don't want to go further on this. We probably have understood where we stand, and you can pause the video, or you can go to my website and have a direct access to this chart, and you can do your own analysis. Thank you for your time listening, and I'll come back with a new video next time. Thank you.